Well, I wanted to say, first of all, welcome back, everyone. For those of you who have joined the first session, this session is a follow-on from that, and it's called From Frameworks to Implementation. So it does build on session one. I will try to provide some recap at points, but it would be useful afterwards, if you haven't seen session one, to go and check that out as well. So in session one, I introduced a number of frameworks for understanding how to work with AI, assistants mainly, and today we'll go a little bit deeper. So the agenda on the right of this slide gives you the 5 sections that we're going to be covering today, and I have built this from the feedback that you gave me during the first session. And the recording and slides, as Kerry mentioned, are available for that first session if you would like a copy. So of the 5 sections, the first one is called Welcome Back. We'll recap briefly the 5 frameworks from session 1 and go through your feedback. You'll be pleased to know there's another Slido poll to go through. Section 2 is about building out your AI policy. We'll develop a one-pager template from a simple data classification system to help you move from shadow AI to approved systems. Section 3 will go through the craft pipeline, and we'll do a hands-on. We'll go from a messy spreadsheet to an actual, sort of set of insights with a live demo of how to do that. Section 4 is board governance and ethics, and we'll look at trustee responsibilities in that section. And then the final section is tools and next steps. So we'll explore Copilot and Claude, and we will also do paid tiers and specialist tools for charities. So with that, I will move on to the next slide. And this is a slide where I'm going to recap what we talked about in the first session. If you recall, we went through 5 frameworks. We'll be using them at various points today. The first framework was RACE, which is your template for effectively prompting AI assistants. And we'll be using it live in this session to draft an AI policy. And second was GUARD, which is the framework that defines your 5 safety boundaries. Every AI task that you do should pass the GUARD test. And we'll use this in the AI policy and data sections. And then third was CRAFT. So I mentioned this already. This is a go-to pipeline for helping you think about how to structure data tasks. And section 3 on data leverages CRAFT in some depth. Fourth was the triple T. So this was trust, training, tooling. These are 3 challenges that every charity needs to design around. We covered them in session 1 and are going to resurface today in the governance and tools section. And then the 5th and final framework is called REACH, and this covers your personal AI leadership journey. I will mention that in brief at the close. You can see on the right here the AI pyramid, which I also spoke about last time, which maps the 6 levels of AI adoption as I see it. It progresses from level 1, which is assistance, free tools, through to full operating model transformation, which is where a lot of tech businesses are, I mentioned last time. And in session 1, we focused mostly on layer 1 and a little bit of layer 2. Today, we're going to be getting more into tools which are in layers 2 to 4. And that's where I believe the real sustained value from AI typically gets built. I should just say, because I forgot to mention it at the start, a little bit about me, in case you weren't in session 1. So my name's Mal, I'm a technologist. I've worked in tech for a very long time. And in the last 6 months or so, I have pivoted to working fractionally and also assisting charities with AI and digital concerns. I'm also a trustee with an AI and digital focus for 2 UK charities. So that's a really quick bit of belated introduction to me. Okay, So session 1 feedback. So here's an analysis of the feedback from the first session, and this session was designed around it, so I thought it was important to give you a little bit of insight into what people were saying. I had 29 written feedback responses, had a lot of really good feedback. Thank you to everyone who did fill it in. The bar chart on the left shows the breakdown of session 2 topic requests. You can see that AI policy and templates were clear number 1, CRM and data systems, ethics, board governance all came in joint second. More use cases and AI road mapping weren't far behind. So hopefully you can see that the sessions the sections that we're going through today map directly onto something that at least 2 of you asked for in the feedback. And I also wanted to call out whoever sent the feedback on the right hand side. Really resonated with me because that was the goal of session 1, to introduce you to some frameworks which are vendor agnostic. So this is the really important point. The frameworks that we have been through in session 1 do not link to Anthropic or Google or Microsoft. They are vendor agnostic, and they're really higher level ways of encouraging you to think about the kind of landscape that you're in when you're using AI tooling. So session 1 gave you the frameworks, and then in session 2 hopefully you'll see how we can put them to work on problems that your organizations actually face, like writing policy, processing data, governing AI at board level, and choosing tools with confidence. And so with that, we'll just do a little bit of limbering up. So there's a Slido poll that I'd like to do before we get into the content. So reminder, once again, there are no right or wrong answers here. What I would love you to do, if you could, is to get involved. So please go to sly.do and enter this code. Or if you want, you can use your phone camera, click on the QR code, follow the link. Voting is anonymous by default. So if I could ask you all, please, to try and get on the Slido. We can start with the first question now, and I will just go and have a look, see how many answers we're getting. Got a few. Could I have some more, please? I'm interested to get a kind of sense from the room of what you're thinking. Once I've got to a suitable number, I'll click and reveal. I like to wait until I've got a few so that you're not biased, and then we can see what everyone is thinking in the room. Okay, looking pretty good. I think I will now reveal the scores. So this is what you're saying in the room. Super interested, in the middle. Overwhelmed, excited, cautious, intrigued, positive, exploring but not confident, worried. Some really interesting responses. I like meh, that's a good one. Hopefully I will unmeh you in this meeting. So really fantastic. There's no right or wrong answer, as I said, just to really sort of get you going in terms of how you're thinking. It's quite normal to see a balance between being positive and being a little bit worried and negative. It reflects what's going on in the media, and it also reflects my own personal stance. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to move you on now to the next Slido question, which is all about AI policy. So do you have an AI policy in your in your charity? And so rather than a binary yes or no, what I decided to do was to give you a more nuanced spectrum of responses to try to gather some signal from the participants, because this is going to be important when it comes to the AI policy section. I have I suppose a hypothesis of what I think will come from your responses, but I'm really interested to see what is coming out from your results. So if I could ask you, oh wow, so we do have a lot of responses. That's really great. So let me reveal the results. And that was actually my hypothesis. And if you answered with no, but we have some informal practices, you are almost exactly in the right place for the next section. Also, if your answer was no, but we have no current plans to implement one, that's also something that you will benefit from the next section. And finally, also yes, we do, but I'm not sure if it's effective or regularly checked. So really interesting, fantastic results. Thank you for responding. And now the final one, if I could just move you on. So this one, if you don't know what some of these terms are, then don't worry. I will kind of like explain some of them as we go along. But since we're going to be covering data analysis, I wanted to understand which of these tools do you use for data analysis? Now, in terms of that question, it could be yourselves personally. I think that would be quite useful because you're on the session. So I'm trying to understand, the level at which to pitch this. The context for this question is that in a typical Microsoft-based workflow, many of you use Microsoft tools. An analyst will use SQL, perhaps to pull precise data from a database. They might use Python to process that data, Excel to load and check specific figures, or they may even have the data already in Excel. And then they might use tools like Power BI to build a dynamic dashboard from Excel file in SharePoint. So I wanted to understand a little bit about where you were on this and on this journey. So I'm gonna now, I've had quite a few, this again, I had a hypothesis and it has been confirmed. So I have worked with a few charities now, and one thing I've noticed is that Excel is used universally. So a lot of you will have your data in Excel. Interesting to see AI Assistant and also Power BI represented quite highly. And Python is quite low on the list. So this would be, interestingly enough, I would say this is almost the exact inverse of what goes on in tech. So in tech businesses, it will be mostly Python and SQL that are used for data analytics, and then tools like Power BI for visualization, although AI assistants are also increasingly used. You'll be pleased to know, though, that even in tech businesses, a lot of things run on Excel. A lot of the business functions will use Excel for vital business data. Okay, so that was a bit of a limber up. Thank you for those of you that responded. We're going to move on now to building your AI policy. So this was the #1 request from session 1, and also in line with the Slido results. I'm going to spend a bit of time working through it because I believe it's the most impactful governance step that most organizations in the room can take this month. And so we're going to cover why every charity needs a policy now, how to get started, and then I'm going to do a bit of a live exercise where I'll use a race prompt to generate a first draft AI policy for a fictional small charity that is going to appear a few times in this presentation. They're called Bright Hope. They're not real, they're made up by me. They're a youth charity that tackle youth unemployment. And a word on the layout moving forward. So you'll see that my slides tend to be quite dense. I think that's a style that can be useful for post-presentation references. You can follow them up yourselves, and also to reabsorb the information. That's just a particular way that I like to present. And I also have a left panel and a right panel. The left panel is what I focus on during the presentation of the slide. The right panel contains additional information for you. So that's just a word on how you will see the slides that ensue. So first one, why does every charity need an AI policy now? Well, I'll be referring quite a few times to something called the Charity Digital Skills Report from 2025, or CDSR as I'll call it. And on page 15, according to the text, the summary, 43% of charities cite data privacy GDPR and security is their top AI barrier. It's risen from 31% just the year before. And for large charities, it rises to 56%. So page 14, on the other hand, points out that only 22% of charities have reviewed their governance for trustee oversight. And here's the uncomfortable reality behind these numbers. As many of you have illustrated with your responses in Slido, most charities and many of you are already using AI. So staff are using free tools like ChatGPT with organisational content for grant narratives. Maybe they're using AI note takers without any rules. They're using beneficiary summaries, often without guidance on what is and isn't appropriate. And this is what I term, and what is often termed in the industry, as shadow AI. It's not deliberate rule breaking. It's people finding tools that help them to do their jobs better and just using them. But without a policy, it carries real governance and reputational risk for your organisations. So the 4 stages on the right pretty much reflect the spectrum that you saw in the second Slido question. So stage 1 is no policy, staff using whatever works, no visibility for leadership. Stage 2 is informal norms, where there is some shared understanding, but perhaps nothing written down. Stage 3 is documented policy, written guidance, approved tools, data classification in place. Stage 4 is where trustees have ratified and signed off on the policy and a review cycle is in place. And CDSR data reveals that most charities are at stages 1 or 2, and that's what we saw from the Slido as well. And so what a policy does is simple. It just gives staff clear boundaries and permissions. It removes anxiety and guesswork, and it creates accountability by clarifying which tools can be used and under what conditions. And it doesn't have to be long to be effective. As I say on the right-hand side, the goal is clarity. It's not, compliance theatre, which you sometimes see. 1 page is enough. And in terms of the structure, what should be in it, 6 policy sections I would recommend, and they break down as follows, as shown on the left-hand side. Section 1 is purpose. Why does this policy exist? What does it cover? Section 2, approved tools. Which AI tools are staff permitted to use, at what tier, and for what use cases? And you don't have to list every single AI tool. You're just looking at the key defaults and their boundaries. Section 3 is data classification. What can and cannot be entered into AI tools. This is the most important operational section, and we'll go into depth in the next slide on how that works. Section 4, verification requirements. What must be checked before AI output is used or shared? So every workflow that you have that produces AI-assisted output needs a named human review step. Section 5 is trustee visibility and sign-off. Who approves new tools? Who reviews incidents? How do trustees maintain oversight? Boards don't need to approve every single prompt, of course. That would be very inefficient, but they do need to know that the policy exists, who owns it, when it's going to be reviewed. So review cycle, section 6, when and how often will the policy be reviewed? My recommendation is at least every 6 months, given the rate of change in this space. And on the right are outlines for sections 2 and 4 for our charity, Bright Hope. They're pretty small. They only have 8 staff, and they use Copilot for daily work. They use Claude Pro to assist with grant applications. And they also use a tool called Granola that some of you might know. It is a very popular transcription tool. And I put a note in here on AI note takers, because I think that that can be a particular challenge in charities. And I've noticed a difference. In tech businesses, they're universally used for every meeting. But in charities, you have to be careful, because you could be discussing topics which are very sensitive, that involve funding or beneficiary disclosures. So you have a responsibility to let people know before you do the meeting whether you're running a note taker or not. So the key message for the AI policy is that it's a starting point. It's not the final document. You have to adapt it for your organization. But you can start with this structure today. And that is what we're going to do now in the next slide. So we'll start with a data classification. This is the section of your policy where most of the practical safety will be built in. So just to be clear, quite a few of you here may already have a data classification policy, in which case just use that. For our purposes at Bright Hope, the hypothetical charity that I'm mentioning, they don't have one, so we're starting with 3 tiers and we're calling them green, amber and red. Green is data that you can share freely, and this includes public information, published reports, anonymized aggregates, any synthetic or fictional data, your own published content. That can go into any tool at any tier, including free tools. Amber is data you have to handle with care, maybe internal documents that don't name individuals, anonymized case summaries, aggregated data with appropriate consent. So for amber data, you need to use a paid personal tier as a minimum. Free tools are not appropriate for amber classified data. And red is data that should never go into either a free or personal tool. Named beneficiaries, case notes, addresses, contact details, staff personal data, HR records, financial records, you get the picture. For red, you need a enterprise or team tier with a what's called a DPA or data protection agreement with the vendor in place, or avoid using AI for the task. And so the decision tree on the right gives you 3 questions to ask before you enter anything into an AI tool. If in doubt, go up a tier. It's always better to be safer when you're treating data as, you can treat it as more sensitive than you think it is. And if we link back to our guard framework from session 1, what we're talking about here is operationalization of the 5th boundary, the defend, namely no personal or beneficiary data in free AI tools. And for those of you that were there last time, you'll recall that I mentioned 5 tests for each of those elements of guard, and for D it was the newspaper test. Would you want to see that prompt and the results in a newspaper? That's a test you can use to assess whether you think something is red or not. Okay, so how do we get from wherever you are today to a documented policy? So I'm going to suggest 5 steps which are outlined on this slide on the left-hand side. None of them should take you very long to undertake. Step 1 is an audit of which AI tools your team is currently using and finds essential. Quick 10-minute survey here will surface the shadow AI. You'll probably be surprised by what comes back. Step 2 is you decide on the approved tools list, starting with what people already use. Don't try to rationalize everything or include everything. Just start with the top 2 or 3 most commonly used tools. Step 3 is to apply a data classification, if you don't already have one, to your 3 most common data types. In this case, we're going to stick with the green, amber, red classification just for illustrative purposes. Step 4 is to write a 1-paragraph purpose statement on why your charity uses AI and has an AI policy. Step 5 is to share a draft with your senior leadership team. And so what I'm going to do now is the first exercise. And for this one, what I'm going to do is copy this prompt here. So this is a prompt for how to generate an AI policy. And you'll see that it's broken down into RACE, which is the 4 elements of race, the role, the action, the context, and the expectation. I'm not going to read through it all. You can see it here, and you can follow on afterwards yourselves. But what I am going to do is I'm going to switch over to a tool called Claude Cowork, which I use extensively, and hopefully you'll see that appear on your screens. So this is a view on something called Claude Cowork, which rather conveniently tells me that Claude Fable 5 is unavailable, which is a whole separate news story some of you may be familiar with. But anyway, literally all I do is just cut and paste that prompt into here. And then I ask Claude. So Claude is smart enough to know that this is an RACE prompt. It will go off and it will look to build a policy on the basis of that prompt. Now, rather like the best tradition of TV chefs, rather than having you all sit here watching Claude do its thing, I'm going to switch you over to another one that I did earlier. So you can see it's the exact same prompt. Yes, you don't really want to waste half an hour waiting for Claude to do its thing. So what it generates is a policy document that looks like this. And you can see that it has the 6 sections from purpose, approved tools, data classification, verification requirements, trustee visibility and sign off, and review cycle. Now, one of the things that I was going to share with you is that I made it very clear in session 1, and I'll make it clear again. AI is often wrong. You cannot just publish whatever an AI produces, however sophisticated your prompt is. So what you have to do is read through the output and determine what it got right, what things need adjusting, what you need to edit before you share with trustees. But if you recall, in session 1, we talked about using AI as a thinking partner. And in this oven-ready recipe, I've already done that. So you can actually ask further questions. You can ask it to be critical, engage what it got right, what it missed, what needs to be hand-edited in the policy before it goes to trustees. And it comes up with some actually well-thought-through responses where it made judgment calls that need checking. It's identified things that are missing, and it goes through a list of stuff that has to be hand edited before it goes to trustees. So my point is I'm not going to go through the detail here. We don't have time. You can actually do this yourselves if you have access to Claude or ChatGPT, or potentially, I think even in Copilot. It's a way of thinking. So you ask the AI to produce something, and then you ask it to be critical and gauge what it got right, what it missed. Sometimes, it's interesting if you were to say that to a human being, they might get offended or a little bit upset, perhaps, but you don't have that with an AI, so you can be as harsh as you like in a way and just ask it to be really critical about its response. So that's an example of how we can use Claude co-work. You could also do this in chat, but I like co-work because it produces documents, and those documents can be opened in Word, or they reside in a folder on your desktop. I think I mentioned co-work last time. Extremely powerful tool, and it's part of Claude. So if we go back to the slides, hopefully you should be able to see those now, and you can see that if charities are at stage 1 or 2, as we identified from the Slido, moving to stage 3 can be done with the help of a race prompt like this. You don't necessarily need a consultant to help you. You can try and do this yourselves with a little bit of prompt work. So trustee sign-off, which is stage 4, however, is something that you need to do at board. So if you have a board meeting, where you cover this topic, you would introduce it at that stage. Okay, just going to take a quick break for a coffee because I've been talking a while. Right, we're going to move on now to the next section. This is perhaps the longest section and a little bit technical at points. I'll try and keep it as non-technical as possible. But really what we're going to be covering in this section is craft. So craft is a framework. I went through, introduced it last time around. We'll go through it a little bit more in the next slide. And we're going to use it with some messy charity data and craft it into a board-ready donor segment summary live, again using Claude as our analyst. And we'll also look at how you can build a synthetic donor data set to explore lightweight CRM functionality without any GDPR risk. So this is a technique that I think charities could consider using a lot more, actually, based on my limited exposure to charities. This is one area where I've seen some big opportunities. So with that, let's move on to a recap of craft. So C stands for collect. This is where you bring your data together in one place. You export your donor spreadsheet, your beneficiary contact log, your last year's grant report into one document or folder, and you focus only in the C stage of the pipeline on gathering the information. You don't try and do anything with it. R is the next stage of the pipeline where you clean, standardize, and deduplicate that information. So you can do this by telling your AI assistant what you want, and I will show you a prompt for doing that, which will hopefully make this a lot clearer. You can flag blank required fields. You can standardize date formats. You can instruct the AI assistant to do whatever you need to do for your particular use case. A is analyze. This is where you ask questions of your data. And some example questions are presented here on the left-hand side for a fundraising CRM use case. F is the most important step, and unfortunately the one that many people miss. It is to fact check. So you need to verify the AI generated numbers against your source data. And actually the good news is that rather like that approach that I showed you with the AI policy, you can use AI to help you with fact checking, but ultimately you have to authorize and approve, and you cannot ever publish anything from an AI without checking the results, checking the totals, verifying the output first. So T is transform. This is where you convert your output into the format you need. So you may want a board ready summary table, or you might want a report. Whatever format it is that you want, you can use T as the transform step. And the two statistics on the top right tell you why this matters. So 45% of charities say they need support with AI tools for data analysis, but only 13% are currently using AI for this kind of numerical analysis. So craft can help. It is has a compounding benefit. Because every data set you clean and verify becomes what I call a ground truth asset. So you can safely use it in board papers, funder reports, grant applications without having to re-verify it, because it's known once you've verified it the first time. That's in terms of historic data. Okay, so right, now we're going to get onto the second demo. And there's quite a bit going on in this one, so I'll try and explain as I go along. On the left-hand side, you see a made-up. This is made up. I want to reassure you, it's not a real donor data sheet, but it's an example of the kind of thing that you might see. So in a donor spreadsheet, here we have 10 rows. They've got 9 different problems. So see if you can spot them all. There are mixed date formats, gift amounts, missing channel fields, duplicate row in yellow, free text in the notes column, makes it even more complicated. And this is what real charity data can be like. It's not really usable in this state for a funder report or a board paper. And so what are we going to do? I'm going to show you how you can turn this into something usable using Claude. And the way I'm going to do that is, first of all, I'm literally going to cut and paste this data. And remember that I'm using, for these purposes, a version of, well, this has been obfuscated or anonymized, so there's no personally identifiable information in here. So that's an important point in terms of classification. We talked about having an ID. or I will do later, and why it's important to have an ID rather than a name in these kind of data sets. So what we're going to do now is go back to co-work. We're going to start a new session, and I'm literally going to cut and paste that data into Claude. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is create a space. Okay, did you see what I did there? And then I'm going to go back to the slide, and I'm going to cut and paste this prompt. So this prompt is my craft pipeline. It's got the collect, refine, analyze, fact check, and transform steps. So before I copy this in, I want to be really clear. The collect stage just cuts and pastes the data in, and I'll adjust that in the prompt in a section, in a moment when I copy it over. Refine is to clean the data. Note that there's a duplicate policy in the refine step, which you may or may not agree with, but that's the one that I've used. You can always change that policy. So I've suggested removing duplicate rows. You might want to merge them. Analyze is where you segment the donors into groups, and fact check is quite bulked out. So I've added some very specific checks that I want done. I'm expecting a certain total, and I'm expecting certain numbers to go into different categories for the lapsed, the regular, one-off, and major donor sections in the report. And transform is a 200-word board summary where I can be confident of the analysis. So if we go back to our session here, you remember that I cut and pasted and left a couple of spaces, and in here what I'm going to do is edit the this one, the collect stage, and say it's the CSV data is above, so the raw donor CSV data is above, and then that's it. That's the only change I'm going to make. And then I'm just going to run this, and again, I'm not going to subject you to Claude going to do its thing. It will probably only take a minute or so, but rather than go and sit through that, here's one that we did earlier, or I did earlier, yesterday in fact, and you can see it's the same thing, so it's the same prompt, and what Claude does is it goes through and it builds this output. So this is the report that it builds. It goes through and it explains how it cleaned the data. It gives a segment summary. The numbers match up to what I was expecting. And then it's given a 200-word report as its output. Now, for this presentation, because we've only got an hour and a bit, I'm not going to go into huge detail on all the steps. It's more important that you try this yourselves. So, you'll get the slides. You can just try this yourself in, you can try ChatGPT or whatever tool you have. This is not, I use Claude, but you can use whatever tool you want. And then the report is generated, and you can open it in Word, or you can open it in Google Drive, or, however you want to set it up. Those options appear for me, Google Drive, because I've integrated my Claude setup with Google. If you haven't done that, then it won't appear for you. So that's a kind of to give you a glimpse of like how you would use Craft to help process some messy data and turn it into nice, clean summary data that you can put into a board report. Okay. So it's a very generalizable approach. That's the thing that I want to, make sure that you get across. And we've gone from a messy spreadsheet to board-ready segment in under 10 minutes. Okay, but you can go an awful lot further with Craft, and I'm going to show you, just give you a glimpse of the kind of thing that you can do. So this is perhaps the most techie kind of section that we're going to get into now. According to CDSR 2025 on page 12, 30% of charities say their systems are poor or non-existent. That's their IT and data systems. Many of you, as we've seen from the Slido and from kind of anecdotally, are running on spreadsheets. So for our second worked example in this section, I thought, I thought about like what I could do for this presentation that would be really fun. And I thought I would build a fundraising CRM as a thought experiment using AI. So what does that entail? I think from talking to experts in the charity fundraising sector, and from doing my own research, there are 6 things at a minimum. So we saw from the last slide, unique contact ID, which is not a name because that ID reduces data risk, a contact profile, relationship history, pledges, contributions, channel, campaign type, and then also engagement plan. So let's go through a bit of an example of what is possible to do using AI assistants to create a synthetic Excel data set. So rather than jumping straight into creating the spreadsheet, what I'm going to do is ask ChatGPT on this occasion. So I wanted to just make sure I had a bit of diversity in the AI assistants that I use. So I'm going to use ChatGPT to research what a charity CRM should contain. And then I'm going to use an approach which I mentioned last time called meta prompting, where I start with, so in this presentation, anything that's white on black is an actual prompt that you can cut and paste. So what you see on the right here is what I call a meta prompt. You use this in within an AI assistant to generate a high quality prompt. And I mentioned it last time in session 1, and you use meta prompting to write better prompts. That's basically what you do. So for for this, what I'm going to do for the next stage is to copy this prompt here. And on this occasion, we're going to go to ChatGPT. So you should see a ChatGPT window open now, or session. And I'm literally going to I'm just going to drop that prompt in here. And I've requested that it builds out a more detailed prompt for me. So after pressing go, I find that it's just experience that meta prompting with ChatGPT is very, very good. It's much better than Claude, because the problem with Claude, and this is just my own view, Claude is very clever. It tries to solve the problem for you. So it tries to cut through the meta prompting and generate the spreadsheet for you, which is not what I want. What I want to do is what has happened here, where it has interpreted my request to build a fully synthetic Excel workbook with the CRM system of a medium-sized UK charity. The dataset should be suitable, blah, 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 1,000, fundraising contacts, design principles, and it's broken down the structure of the spreadsheet, what should be on each sheet. And it's really quite detailed. So we won't go through all of this here. You can obviously just cut and paste this afterwards yourselves. That's the most important thing. So what we can do, what are the use cases? So here are some examples of use cases. What I'm looking to do is this, create synthetic data environment for training and testing. And again, in the spirit of the session, here's one that I did earlier. So this is the same prompt. You can see the same meta prompt, and it came out with similar, long prompt. And I literally said this. I said, use that prompt to build me a spreadsheet. And ChatGPT built me a spreadsheet. And it has those tables and sections. You can see here, the contacts, the status history, donations, interactions, and campaigns. These are all synthetic, so this is all information which is made up. It's not real. So the important and useful thing with that is that because it's not real, you can use it within coding AI tools and in other environments in order to progress your knowledge and to learn things about how to work with CRM data. Okay, so if we go back to our slide, what you can then do is, I'm going to now demo for you a fully formed CRM prototype that I built on top of a synthetic Excel data set. And you can go and check it out. It's at this URL here, brighthope-crm.lovable.app. So I used a tool called Lovable, which is a very popular vibe coding prototyping tool. And the reason I did this was to just see how far I could go in building a proof of concept of what's possible to achieve using AI-assisted software development. And if I now go over to what Lovable is it's a tool that allows you to prompt on the, slightly confusingly, the prompt column is on the left-hand side, but you use prompts to build software. And in this case, I built a software app, and it's called Bright Hope, and you can see it here. If you go to that URL, you get the same thing. You can sign up and register. I'm going to log in with my Google credentials, because you have to log in to get access to the system. And what you see here is a very basic UI app, web app, that's been built on top of that data. And the way that it works is you see the contacts, these are the synthetic contacts from the Excel spreadsheet. You can see the donations, you can see the progressive loading of the donations, you can see the interactions, you can sort on these columns, you can also filter. And the raw data itself, and I'm not claiming this is going to win any prizes or anything, you literally can back up or restore from Excel. Actually, you can't unless you're an admin. I'm an admin, so I can. Otherwise, it would be chaos if you could all upload and restore data willy-nilly. But the point of this is to just give you a sense of what it's possible to do. So essentially, what I have done is uploaded this Excel spreadsheet and turned it into a database using this app. And then once you have the database, you can then build your own analytics view on top of that data. You can build what are known as choropleth views, so maps, so you can see where the donors concentrate. You can see interaction volumes, outcome sentiment by staff owner. And the real funky thing, which I'm really quite pleased with, is that you can actually build an integrated agent inside of the app to ask questions of your data. So, for instance, here are a few convenient pills that you can try. What were the total donations by year? So I'm using an Anthropic model here, the Sonnet model, as the background to this. So it will give me a summary of total donations by year, and I can see with some analysis of those donations. And then I can do things like, see what the breakdown is by region. And I think it's Greater London where it has the most, you could see from that map that it had the highest density. So you can see Greater London. They can do things like this. You can say, who are the top 10 donors by lifetime in Greater London. Hopefully you can see me typing this in Greater London. And so when you do that, it will go off and it will try to figure out, who those are. So this assistant is integrated in. It has the ability to run SQL queries and work with the data that underlies everything. So you can see it's got the top 10 and it's got their lifetime value and it's got their ID. And what I'm now going to do is choose one of them to, I'm kind of interested. I'm just going to choose Fraser White. So let's profile Fraser, get the spelling right, Fraser White. So, and it will go off and it will build a profile for me. And it will go off and do that in the background. So, you can see like in the about section, a little bit more detail on how this thing works. It is not a product. It's really just a tool for you to explore, how to go about, sort of playing with data and really just show you that a well-structured AI assisted spreadsheet can be faster, cheaper, and more governable than a poor CRM. So here you see Fraser White. You've got here contact summary and donation history, interactions over time, and then something which I think is quite important. It certainly is in commercial context, and that is the NBA, or next best action, for that donor. And this is something that I built on top of that synthetic data set. So it's really to just try to kind of give you some inspiration, maybe, or some ideas for things that you could do with your data. They're a little bit, well, quite a lot more advanced than just using an AI assistant. So if you remember the pyramid, we've now gone down to layer 4, which is the coding AI tool that has been used to build this. And what happens with Lovable is that you can host the app that you build on one of their own URLs, which is why it's on Bright Hope CRM lovable.app. Okay, so I appreciate that was really a lot to take in. One thing that I would say from that, though, is because CRM has come up quite a lot, my point of view on CRM systems is that if you are a charity like Bright Hope, you're quite small, you may only have 500 active donors, you may not really need to graduate to what I would call a proper CRM until you have gone past that 500 active donor barrier. What I see sometimes is that charities, they get kind of stuck in all these conversations about what CRM should I use, and with that, appropriately enough, fundraising CRM strategy. So what I demoed for you was really just a proof of concept built with an AI coding tool. It's not a serious option. But in reality, there are a spectrum of options and trade-offs for charities when approaching how to tackle CRM strategy. And this slide outlines 6 of them, ordered roughly in terms of sort of cost to build and maintain and cost of implementation. So the color coding reflects 3 broad phases of CRM maturity. So just as we spoke about AI policy maturity, charities are at different stages of CRM maturity. If you're at phase 1, you're really just managing supporter relationships in spreadsheets, and you kind of don't really have a system beyond that, and that's what I call discovery. Phase 2 is where you're operationalizing. Maybe you've got consistent about the shared system, and you have an audit trail, and that's when you can start to think about a CRM. Phase 3 is when you're scaling out. So if you're a bigger charity, you definitely will already be at this stage. And the 6 options are on the left-hand side. Option 1 is a spreadsheet plus a low-code tool like Airtable, or you could even use SharePoint. And option 2 is a custom web app, and I've put a blue box around that because that's what I showed you today. That was a custom web app built on top of a spreadsheet using Lovable. Option 3 is to use an internal tool platform, and there are some examples here. I've provided links to all of them. Option 4 is to use the Microsoft stack. Now, Microsoft have this, Microsoft have a lot of products, actually. I'm not familiar with many of them, but there's a thing called Power Apps and Dataverse, which you really should look at if you are using Microsoft 365 in your organization. I think for charities, and that will be many of you that are already on Microsoft 365, you get strong data governance around existing tools. Power BI, which I mentioned at the start, along with Power Apps, very useful things for you to look at. And then Microsoft have a tool called Dynamics 365, which is a CRM. I think if you're on a Microsoft stack, you probably really should go for the box in green. Obviously you have to be aware of vendor lock-in, hidden IT overhead, and AI that's not necessarily leading edge, but that is probably your best option. And then option 5 is an open source CRM. Probably wouldn't recommend that. And then option 6 is to buy a direct SaaS CRM. So I know a lot of charities, and perhaps some of you here, use Razor's Edge or Salesforce or Beacon or tech like that. And that may make sense if working with donors is a very important part of your charity. So to repeat, 1 and 2 are spreadsheet anchored low code approaches. 3 and 4 are middleware platforms, I would say. So those are tools that sit between a database and a custom app. And then 5 and 6 are purpose-built CRMs. And so, you know, the axis you descend is, roughly speaking, build to buy with secondary filter of generalist to specialist. So it really depends on your context, as does a lot of things when it comes to CRMs. So my strategic advice is on the right. If you're starting from 0 in phase 1, then don't over-engineer too early because you get locked in. You need to understand your process, your data fields, your current kind of hygiene, and your supporter journey. Okay, so that's enough about CRM. We're going to now move on to board and trustee governance. There's only one slide here, but it covers a lot of ground that we didn't cover in session 1. So the question really that we're trying to address in this section is, what does good trustee oversight of AI look like in practice? Not as theory, but as a practical approach that a real board of volunteers can sustain alongside all the other many things that they're responsible for. And you know, for this, I'm going to say that for me, there are 4 fundamental questions. And the first important point around these questions to make is that trustees do not need to be AI experts. What trustees need is an approach for asking the right questions and knowing what good answers look like. And so the 4 questions that I would suggest that they need to look at putting on the board agenda around AI for meaningful governance are: 1, what AI tools are staff using? 2, what data is going into those tools? 3, who is accountable for AI assisted work? And 4, what has changed since the last review? And this is for sort of like regular update at board. And on the right hand side are some mechanisms for supporting that, including, short standing item, as I said, as a quarterly board update, an AI tool register, exception incident route, 6-month policy review cycle. And in terms of those 4 questions, what I've provided are some good and some bad answers, potentially speaking. So saying that, I think most people use ChatGPT, but I'm not sure, is not a great answer to what AI tools are staff using. There are better ones, and so what you have here is a starting point. Now, for a small charity, you need to keep this proportionate. The mechanisms. Sorry, and ensure that you, if it helps, you can put it in your AI policy. What I will do is call out some additional questions, which I think are worth you considering as well. So last week I was at London Tech Week in London, and there was a great session on AI and data governance that was led by Edinburgh Futures Institute from Edinburgh University. And you can go hopefully and download that report separately, but they offered 3 additional questions around AI data governance that are worth consideration. And those 3 questions are: does our data improve the tool without benefiting us? Are we adopting it for impact or impressiveness? And can we unwind decisions that it influences? And I think those are additional, bonus extra questions that you might want to consider for board governance. Okay, so penultimate section, ethics and responsible AI. So I developed this section as a result of feedback from last time. Several of you specifically asked for treatment of AI ethics, and others have raised concerns about bias and environmental impact in their written responses. So I'm going to try and address that in this slide, and kind of offer some thoughts from myself. It's these are just my opinions on where I think charities could position themselves. And I'll also try and be direct about human connection and professional judgment, because I think they're more important than AI. And so it's something that we need to all keep in mind when it comes to all the excitement and interest in AI. And with that, We'll start with the responsible AI spectrum. So those of you that were in the session last time around will hopefully be familiar with this diagram. I outlined 3 broad positions on a responsible AI spectrum. Minimalist, where AI is used only when strictly necessary with maximum human oversight at every step. The risk here is opportunity cost. Organisations doing this might find themselves falling behind their peers. Maximalist is where you automate everything you can, sometimes known as YOLO in the tech industry, like drive as fast as possible. It's all too common in that sector, and the risk here though for charities is really high, because without governance, maximalist adoption creates potential reputational exposure, and this is like especially acute if your charity is working with vulnerable people. So I think for charities you should be looking at something in between, which is what I call responsible AI. This is where you use AI proactively, where it adds value with clear governance boundaries and human sign-off. It's not a compromise, it's what genuine capability looks like when it's well governed, and it's a balanced trade-off in my view. And I just want to reiterate, as I think hopefully some of you remember last time I mentioned, I am not an unthinking advocate of AI. I'm actually personally very conflicted about using it, and my own personal concerns are around de-skilling and erosion of critical thinking that can result from an over-reliance on AI. So if you stop checking outputs, or you stop practicing your underlying professional judgment, you will find yourselves losing sharpness and instinct. And that is a real organisational risk. It's happened to me in relation to software development. I've lost some of those skills over the last year because it's just easier to ask the AI to do it. And like a lot of other people in the tech industry, these are becoming growing concerns. So I would encourage you to be balanced about how you use AI. And, we're going to go and talk a little bit now about some of the negatives of AI use. And there are 3 further ethical concerns that I think you should consider that I will cover here. The first is bias. So AI systems reflect the data they were trained on, which amplifies historic human biases in that data, which is spread all through it. And for charities, if you're using AI to help decide who gets support or who gets contacted, you should be aware that the model's outputs may not be neutral, and that you need a human in the loop exercising their agency and judgment for any consequential decision. Environmental cost. This came up unprompted in multiple session 1 responses, and it's a concern that I noted in the CDSR page 16. That is hopefully highlighted here. Yes, so 2/3 of charities see that commitment to environmental principles by digital suppliers is either very important or really important. And I've done some work on this separately with another business that I work with called Earthmark, which is trying to build a system for providing like a sort of environmental trust mark for companies. You can use that to help decide whether which kind of company you want to work with. But environmental cost is a real concern, and it's worth noting that a single GPT-4 query uses approximately 10 times the energy of a standard Google search. So running 100 queries a day is roughly equivalent to a short car journey per week in energy terms. And data centers can intensify pressure in already water-stressed regions. I've linked a couple of, I think, the top experts in the world to follow on this topic if you're interested. Hannah Ritchie from Scotland, who's a member of OWID, Our World in Data. She's, I think, the lead scientist there. And Sacha Lucioni. I've put the links in. Please do follow them. They are far more expert on this than myself. What I will say is that for high value use cases, that is where you should be using AI, not trivial substitutions, and certainly not silly little image generations and that kind of thing. So batch similar tools into one session or similar tasks. So something like that Bright Hope CRM that I showed you is actually, I would argue, a good use case, because once it's built, the development cost is amortized across every single person who uses that tool. So my go-to use case is to use AI to build software faster than I would ordinarily, or in fact probably never would have done. So once you've built the software, and that tool I showed you, the Bright Hope CRM, that is software that doesn't use AI, not unless you use the agent within it. But you can build software that doesn't have AI in it, and I think that's a good use case, because once it's software, it's not consuming tokens. And the final point I'd make is on agentic AI. So AI assistants, when you ask, you do a query and you get a response, that's called a single turn per question. And that might use, for a simple question, that's the one that uses 10 times the energy. But with agentic AI, you have multiple turns that are invisible to you to plan, retry, call external tools, process in loops before handing back to the user. And in theory, that's more powerful, but it's much harder to see because the system takes many actions before you get the result. And Richie suggests that agentic AI response could be 1,000 times more costly than a normal AI response. So that's potentially 10,000 times or more the energy of a Google search. So for that reason alone, I'm personally skeptical about agentic AI for charity use and social return on investment. But I mean, it's something that you may want to look into a little bit more. It's also, unfortunately, what a lot of people in the AI industry are trying to sell in a very aggressive way. But anyway, moving on the right are a list of things I think AI should not do in charity work, which hopefully should be obvious now. So the key question for me is not, can we use AI for this? Because almost certainly you could, but should we? Which is more about governance than tech and taking that balanced approach. Right, okay, we're now on to the last section, choosing the right tools. And this again came from feedback in session 1. A number of you asked for clarity on what tools are right for your organization, and several others asked specifically about Copilot versus Claude. So we'll cover that comparison and talk about tier trade-offs, and then do a quick survey of specialist charity tools. So on the Copilot versus Claude question, my personal point of view is that if you are already on Microsoft 365, as I pointed out during the CRM section, that's going to be, Copilot's going to be your anchor tool, and you're kind of really, you'd be best advised to stay on the Microsoft stack. And the great depth, the great strength of Copilot is it's already deeply integrated into Microsoft 365, works inside of Word, Excel, Outlook, Teams, SharePoint, and it's a solid tool. Enterprise controls are mature and well understood. However, what I think, I don't really use Microsoft tools myself. Like a lot of people in tech tend to be on different product suites. For tasks, I think that go beyond typical Microsoft workflow, like long document synthesis or deep analysis of uploaded files, nuanced writing, or the vibe coding that I was showing you, of an Excel visualization app, it may be less flexible. And what I use is Claude for that, and I find it excellent for long-form document creation as well as craft pipelines, as I demonstrated earlier. So the thing is that with Claude, if you have Claude Pro or team interactions going on, if you're using those tools, then interactions aren't used to train models by default. And I'm a massive fan of Claude Cowork, which is what I demonstrated earlier, because it lets you build a persistent knowledge base from your own source material, which is very useful for organizations with a lot of institutional context. And you can build that on your own desktop in folders, which is how I go about doing it. But I appreciate Claude doesn't integrate natively into 365, and it is if your work lives in Teams and Outlook, you will need to switch context and work with documents in a folder. And I use my Mac desktop for this. But I think that with SharePoint, there can be you can also work with SharePoint through Claude via an integration, and that may be the model that you want to take if you're going to use Claude. But my key message for you today is that these tools are not in competition. They complement each other. You could use Copilot for work inside of 365 and Claude for craft-based analysis. And the best tool is the one that your team is actually going to use consistently and safely. And in the tech world, which I come from, most professionals I know they're using multiple tools and switching by task. And platform loyalty matters less really than the governance clarity that you've put in place. So with that, the tiering decision. So I'm not going to say much here except that as I mentioned last time, the difference between free tier and paid tiers is not about features so much, it's more governance, although you do get better access to better models. Free tier is okay for personal skill building and low stakes tasks, but organizational data should not go into a free tool. And what you will find is if you have a paid tier, not only do your conversations not train the model, you can work with anonymized data, and you can have longer sessions. So if anyone is using AI for work tasks on the free tier, you can close your governance risk by shifting to a paid tier. And then a team or enterprise tier has a DPA, so the data processing agreement in place. And this is required if you're using any AMBER data, or you need to satisfy funder due diligence on AI governance. And I think it's also worth, so I'm not an expert on this, but I think all of these businesses will offer non-profit options, which will be less. And so those, you should definitely look at non-profit options for Claude and OpenAI. And I think Microsoft already have very extensive support in that respect. And I think that for me, the bottom line is that if a tool can save a staff member 3 hours a week because they've automated something, a personal subscription can more than pay for itself. And that is the way that a lot of people in tech, sort of view the use of AI. Right, so quick one on specialist tools by task. So here are some charity specific AI tools that you might want to have a look at. I found them using another AI tool called Perplexity, and when you get this deck, you'll see that there's a link here. I've made this deep research openly accessible to you all. So inside of Perplexity, you'll see a deep analysis here in a document of AI tools for UK charities. And it includes a decision tree. And I think I mentioned before, what I really like about Perplexity is that it gives you an awful lot of verifiable links. So, it doesn't just hallucinate this stuff. It actually goes through and provides the references. So if you don't, if you don't trust what it's generated, you can at least follow the links and make your own mind up from those. So that's provided for you. I'll just say here the first four are related to grant application. Beam is a sector-specific beneficiary support coordination. Otter and Granola are low-cost transcription summaries. I use Granola heavily. It is integrated into my Claude setup so that after a meeting I can just pull the transcript and then work with it. But as I said earlier, you have to be very careful about AI note takers in a charity context, and you have to let people know that you're recording them. Okay, so on the right hand side is a decision framework that applies to any AI tool. And I think my key takeaway from this is that a general purpose tool beats a specialist tool every single day, in my view. especially in light of tech advances, because you can use these general purpose tools to answer any kind of problem that you have rather than a specific one. Okay, so with that, I think we're now, yes, we're almost at the end. So I wanted to give you 4 things that I would like you to take away from today. The first is governance. And a 1-page AI policy, an approved tools list, green, amber, red data rules are enough to move from informal use to managed adoption. And you should be able to DIY on that yourselves without needing to pay an expensive consultant. Number 2 is that practice beats theory. Teams build confidence by using AI on real work and then checking outputs against sources and using their own professional judgment. So the race and craft prompts for the Bright Hope AI policy and synthetic data creation, they're techniques you can leverage in your organization today. Data quality is the multiplier. So craft only works when the underlying spreadsheet, CRM records and source data are clean enough to trust. If your data's a mess, you have to start there and use AI to help you clean it. I cheated a bit when I created that synthetic data because it was absolutely crystal clear and clean. You know, it didn't have any holes in it because it was synthetic. And the 4th point that I would make to take away is that you should use a mixture of tools. If you just use Microsoft tools and Copilot and stuff like that, then you will only get one experience of AI. Claude and other specialist products like Perplexity have very different strengths, and a diverse toolkit is healthier than over-relying on any one assistant. That will require some investment. So with that, I'd encourage you to get hands-on with AI, because as I mentioned last time, the best way to approach AI is with curiosity and a DIY maker's mindset. And the right panel contains some ideas and indicative timeline. And just to close, AI readiness is not one unicorn tool. It's about repeatable habit with guardrails. I mentioned the REACH framework last time. And you know, if you're interested, you can do a survey to see where you are on that framework in your personal journey. And I'm going to provide a link through to that here in the second box on the left-hand side. We've now reached the end of the session, so thank you for your engagement and support. And I've got 2 requests before a short bit of Q&A. One is feedback. So the most important thing you can do next is to give me some feedback. So just if you open your phone and click on the feedback form link, I'd really appreciate that because your feedback on session 1 shaped this entire session. And session 2 responses will help me shape potential future engagements with the charity sector. So it only takes a minute. Please go and do that. And then connection. So if anything from today resonated or you want to talk about it further, if you would like to get in touch, if you would like you know, a login for the REACH survey, if you're struggling to get hold of that, if you just want to connect with me to talk about an AI policy for your organization, craft pipeline, this Bright Hope CRM strategy, then connect via either Diorama Consulting, which is my business, or LinkedIn, or just use the feedback form to go back to the first point. I also write an AI on AI leadership in a Substack called CXAI, which is more industry focused. The recording and slides are going to be shared by Kerry and the team afterwards. And I do apologise, I've just realised I slightly ran over, but I have a little bit of time for Q&A. So with that, I'm going to stop and you know, see how many Q&A questions I can go through in the next 8 minutes or so. Thank you. Right, with that, let me see. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of questions that have come through. I'll try and go from the start. Could we have link to session 1? Actually, Kerry, I think have you provided that?
Yes, I've provided that.
Okay, awesome. Can we discuss approved tools with AI creep in lots of tools? Hard to keep up with the creep. Yes, and I think the comment about Fable 5 being currently unavailable by Marek is also very appropriate. It's so important to be agnostic of vendor to an extent that you can, because otherwise you're really you're subject to something called platform risk, where the vendor can suddenly change direction, as happened with Anthropic and Fable, or in fact they didn't change direction, the US government did. And that can create all sorts of problems for your organization. And so a lot of people in tech now are using approaches that involve implementing something called a router, where you can switch between different models. If AI is central to your workflow, that's quite important. I think it's less relevant for charities because you're just using the tools for different use cases. And I still think, I use Cowork and Claude heavily, and even though Fable 5 is unavailable, it's still fine for a lot of things that I use it for. Can we discuss AI creep? Yes, I mentioned that it's definitely creeping and you have to protect yourself. Obviously, your advice on writing these prompts, incredibly helpful. Actually, I'm just wondering, can you... Oh no, you can't see this. I can't share this chat, but you can all see it. Skill, yes, it is to a degree. I think it's more like how you work with the assistant and knowing how to get the best results out of it. How do you fact check for large data sets where you don't know what the results should be? You're using Craft to get that data. I think that's perhaps a question for offline, Christina. Not entirely sure I can. You can still use a Craft pipeline for maybe in the A part, the analyze. You kind of want to analyze the data first before you get into fact checking. Hope that helps. Hope to classification, free version of Copilot. Still, yes, it is. Yes. I believe so. I think I mentioned this last time, that what you need to do is to talk to your IT team or your IT provider about the exact terms that you have with your Microsoft setup. I believe that many of you will have the charity suite, which is essentially enterprise level account. Yeah, and that's why. Per my comment earlier, you will default to a Microsoft stack. Please remind me what CDS. So CDSR is just my acronym for Charity Digital Skills Report. So if you Google for that, or in fact, I don't know, Kerry, if you can pass a link through. It's a very interesting report. I did provide a link to it in my first session. It's published and available for all charities, and it's a survey of I don't know how many, I can't remember, but hundreds of separate charities in the UK were surveyed on their use of digital and AI, and it was a summary of, it was a kind of an analysis of that survey. Yep. Okay. Explain why paid AI assistants are safer in terms of handling amber data. That's because with paid AI tools, you are able to control you get like more level of safety in terms of the settings that you can have. With free assistants, you have to be very careful because you're not paying for them. So the vendor can change the terms of the arrangement. They can use your data, as I think was the case with Fable. With Fable, they were, the terms were different from other models that Anthropic had, and they were going to retain your data, which is one of the reasons I didn't use Fable at all. But I think that paid AI assistants, because you're paying, your data is not the product. So I would definitely not use any amber data or red data in a free tool. And I think more Rubenstein made a good point here. You get more data control on paid subscriptions. Enterprise is the best. Oh, I really should have mentioned what CDSR was. Yes, thank you, Lara, for that. Yeah, so the thing with spreadsheets I was going to mention was that if you have a spreadsheet on your laptop, it's actually potentially, in theory, quite a secure way of holding. I mean, it's not a very shareable way, but if you have your data on your laptop, it's more secure than having it in insecure cloud environment. And in that respect, I think the comment on Lovable, no, it's not secure for storing real donor data. I wouldn't use it for that. The point that I was going to make with something like that Bright Hope CRM is that I use Lovable to get it off the ground, but you could easily build that kind of app so that it just sat on your own back end, like it could sit on your own laptop even and have no connection to the internet. And this is my comment about the spreadsheet. If the spreadsheet is on your laptop and you have an app for viewing it on your laptop and you're using a secure connection with a model for analyzing that data, then you are by definition secure because it's only on your laptop. The Lovable was really just a proof of concept. I would not suggest that you necessarily use it for storing real donor data. I use Lovable quite a lot for building software quite quickly, and then I almost always take the software and then rebuild it and put it on my own hosting infrastructure. Right, so I'm conscious of time. Edinburgh Futures report. Yeah, I think I will put a link through to that, but I think you can just Google for it. It was a big announcement at London Tech Week. It's the EFI, the Edinburgh Futures Institute, in the swanky building in Edinburgh, if you know it, and in Quarter Mile. Meeting apologies. Can we, but should we? Yes, you could include that within your policy. Small charity. Yeah, so I think this is a real problem for very small charities that I've worked with. It's even like £7 a month is still money. So you have to think about the pros and cons. Session 1 link. Okay, yeah. So quite a few questions on the links. We'll make sure you get all the links. Is that right, Kerry? And we'll also send this this slide deck.
Yeah, I'll make sure you get all the links to all the sessions, this session and the previous session, or via email after this meeting this week.
And I think we've now run out of time, so thank you all very much. Please do the feedback. That's the most important thing for me. That will help me understand. And also, just to reiterate, if you do want to get in touch about any of this, if you would like to get advice or just talk to me about anything that I've covered in the 2 sessions, connect with me via the feedback or separately, and that will be great. Hope you have a great rest of the day.